All righty, 3, 2, and 1. We are rolling here. What's going on, everyone? Dr. Michael Moeller with the Michael Moeller Mentality. Today, I'm sitting down with Mike Brancatelli, aka Mikeadelic. Mike, thanks for jumping on the podcast today.
It's always good to join another Michael in his pursuit of podcasting and truth. So happy to be here.
We're trying here. We're really trying here. So I found Mike's work through a mutual friend. I was at a vegan yoga rooftop, and this guy we were talking about ayahuasca, and he's like, man, if you're in ayahuasca, if you're in all this stuff, you gotta follow Mikeadelic. So I went and I checked his stuff out, man, and I've been hooked ever since. So I'm like, got to get this guy on. I want to learn more about him, and I totally vibe with a lot of what he's saying. So Mike, first and foremost, tell us a little bit about your podcast and tell us how you got started in the area.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Mikeadelic. I've been doing it for just about almost 3 years now. Previous to that, I was doing another podcast called Part of the Problem with Dave Smith, which is a libertarian podcast, focuses on getting into the nitty-gritty of politics, kind of exposing the bullshit and the lies and stuff. And that was fun. I was doing stand-up comedy in New York, and and then I had an ayahuasca experience, and it kind of shifted my perspective a little bit and opened me up to exploring new areas of thought. You know, the rabbit hole of information never ceases to end. So I created Mikeadelic, and I've been really enjoying it, reaching out, talking to authors, different kinds of people that I find, interesting in the space of liberty, specifically cognitive liberty, the freedom of thought and expression and ideas, and psychedelics, and whatever we want to call spirituality, consciousness, those sorts of things as well. So it's been a trip. It's been fun.
Awesome. So you actually started off on a kind of a libertarian trip, and then that obviously guided you into psychedelics. Can you talk a little bit about what libertarian is? I think that word gets thrown around a lot, and there's a lot of gray areas, right? With, open borders, vaccines, kind of those things. But fill us in on what you consider libertarianism and how you like to provide that message to people.
Yeah, I mean, it's just freedom. It's freedom and respect for the dignity of an individual's experience. And I think that's something that we're lacking in. There's a lot of people in the world that want to tell other people what they can and can't do and how they should do things, and think they should know, that they know better. It's definitely institutionalized in our forms of government and other power structures that exist. And it's been that way since the dawn of civilization. But yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that comes up, I think, when you tell people that you are something, mm-hmm. or that you believe in something. And so, I mean, really, I'm an anarchist. I mean, I think that in an ideal world, if we could all kind of come to the conclusion that we're free and that we could treat each other with respect, and that it's, probably not a good idea to hurt other people and steal from other people, that would be a pretty nice mm-hmm. area to live. If we could really get along in voluntary associations and agreements. And, it seems to happen in some areas of society, but others, there's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of paranoia. People don't trust each other and stuff. So, and then really, and I think libertarianism really is about just, private property, and that starts with your body and your mind and your soul, whatever you believe in, the ownership of yourself and the things that you create, and, the things that you exert your energy into and mix your labor with your time and energy with, and then just kind of knowing that it's morally wrong, I think, I know it's morally wrong to be forceful on other people, to initiate aggression upon other people and force your will upon them. So those are the guiding principles, and I think that's pretty good.
Where's the paranoia come from? Especially when you say libertarianism, in my experience, it comes down to, well, who would build the roads? Who would enforce these laws? Like you're saying, it comes down to personal responsibility. And hopefully if everyone's just nice to each other, if no one's an asshole, then we can get along in this society. But for some reason, people have this fear around that. And what's interesting is a lot of these people that have this fear around that think that the government can save us from those things. Is that a good way to talk about libertarianism?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I don't know. I think when people hear, sorry, I'm just plugging something in over here. I think when people hear libertarianism, they immediately get triggered and they think of like, oh, like you just want like total, no, yeah, that's right. Just let the corporations like, enslave everyone and all this kind of stuff. And oh yeah, like, everyone should have guns. Yeah, right. Okay, stupid. Or who's going to build the roads, or
Yeah.
like about education and all these things. And it's like, I always like what like Tom Woods says. It's like, oh, right. Like if not for government, we'd all just be standing around scratching our heads going, oh my God, like how do I get from point A to point B? So I think this is a deep psychological issue that stems from an individual level, but really throughout the course of our evolution throughout history, is this idea that there's going to be some kind of safety. There's going to be some kind of security. Someone's going to save us. Someone's going to help us. Someone's going to take care of us. We see it with religion. We see it with everything, feudal lords and kingship, and all throughout time. It's always the authority is promising to the people, don't worry, you'll be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And I think people we really like that. We like that because it's comforting. It's comforting to know that there's a safety net below the wire that we're walking on, the tightrope of life. But yeah, that's not really the way that it works. And I love this Thomas Jefferson quote where he says, timid men prefer authority because they fear the tempestuous sea of liberty.
Oh, yeah, man. A lot of people do not want to take on the personal responsibility, right? And I think that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Jordan Peterson. And I actually want to bring it back to Ron Paul. I'm interested a little bit in how you grew up and how do you got to libertarianism, because I was born and raised really hardcore conservative. And when Ron Paul ran for president in 2012, was it? Or no, 2008.
Yeah, he ran in 8 and 12, yeah.
When I first heard him in 8, I was kind of like, guy's a little bit crazy. But in 2012, I was like, I was 22 at that point, where I'm like, this guy knows some stuff, and then I read some of his stuff, and ever since, man, I've been hooked. And what was interesting for me is you did a really good video kind of talking about Ron Paul and Bernie Sanders, and people are like, oh, they're the same guy. And I'm like, what? So, how did you land in the libertarian category?
Yeah, that's really funny because I remember when I was doing Part of the Problem with Dave and like we were joking around, it's like, dude, like they definitely had like a think tank out from like the 2000, because Ron Paul did well in that 2012 and they screwed him.
They did.
So the Democrats were like, who can we get that looks like a Ron Paul? We engineer some kind of like, takeover and condition people to be like, hey, remember, this is just like that crazy white-haired guy, and now it's a new crazy white-haired guy.
Yep.
But it's funny. I mean, yeah, I grew up in New York, in the suburbs of New York City. I guess Democrat. I think my father is like a conservative Democrat, which doesn't really exist anymore. He's a church going, kind of person, but he has liberal attitudes, I don't know, reads the New York Times, whatever. And he's a teacher, both my parents are teachers. So, they're of course in favor of the state doing things and taking care of teachers and, unions and all that kind of stuff. But I never felt like I always just felt like something was up. Like ever since I can remember, I was just always like looking at things and going, but why? Like why does it have to be this way? I don't understand. Why am I only presented with like 2 options? Or, why are my parents telling me like this is the way it is and there's no other way? And I'm like, all right, this is weird, So yeah, it was really around. I actually got into libertarianism in a kind of like a different way, like a backdoor kind of way or something. Like a friend of mine who was at the NYU Stern School for Business. We lived together, and he every day he would have the market channels on, like Jim Cramer and stock markets and all this kind of stuff, Squawk on the Street and whatever, and so he was into economics, and he handed me a book by Peter Schiff. And at the time, I just graduated college, and I had student loan payments that I was making, and I was really feeling the crunch. And I read this book by Schiff, The Real Crash, and I think he mentioned Ron Paul in it, or Ron, somehow there was like a connection there. And then I discovered Ron Paul, and then I started paying attention to him in the campaign of 2012. 2008, I was Obama. I was an Obama guy. I was in college. I didn't know. I just was like this. I wasn't even political. I didn't care. I was just like, this guy sounds cool, you know? And so, but then everything changed. I started reading. I got into Ron Paul. I started listening to him, watching his speeches. Discovered Tom Wood shortly after, and everything. And then once you get to the Mises Institute, it's just game over. You discover Rothbard, and then it's like you can never go back.
And then, so that kind of motivated you to get on the Liberty podcast, or?
So I was doing comedy. I was doing stand-up comedy in New York, and I met this guy Dave Smith, and he was telling me that he used to do a podcast, but we were talking. Comics would hang out in the green room, like, before going on stage and after their sets. And like, sometimes we get into some pretty interesting conversations. And I think he was talking about Ron Paul. And I was like, yeah, that's the guy, and then we started talking. I was like sharing what I learned about, the economy and the real crash and the student loan crisis and the banks and all this stuff. And he was telling me about, oh, you gotta read guy Murray Rothbard, and check out the Mises Institute and all this stuff. And then so he told me that he had done this show about politics. He wasn't doing it anymore, and I was like, dude, we gotta, like, I'll do anything to we gotta bring this show back, because I care about this stuff and I want to talk about it. And you're like the only person that that can have a conversation for like 4 hours about this stuff. So let's do it, man. And then we started it in 2014.
Nice, man. But then, so where's the psychedelic experience come in on this, huh?
It's interesting. So the psychedelic experience happened all around at the same time. It was this crazy convergence of Ron Paul, libertarianism, politics, Terence McKenna, Alan Watts philosophy, and like high-dose, profound psychedelic experiences. And I read like Steve Jobs' biography at the time, and he was like, LSD was the most important thing I ever did in my life. And, so there was all these things that were like, all these connections that were happening in my mind. And I was just like, I didn't see anybody out there really, really kind of stressing the fact that the psychedelic experience is a liberty experience. It is a liberating experience. And it's not to say that like, well, everybody needs to have this experience or not. I mean, you can get that experience from going to being a part of church or being a part of some community organization or whatever it is that gets you feeling like you're connected to some kind of bigger thing and, whatever. But I thought that was pretty powerful, and I wanted to talk about that. So I started Mikeadelic. Yeah.
You started Mikeadelic, and then, so you've been to Peru too, right?
Yeah. I've been to Peru 3 times now. Yeah.
Okay.
I lived there for about 4 months last year. Yeah.
Okay. And what motivated you to do that?
So I had been struggling like with chronic depression. It kept like increasing like year after year. And I just really couldn't get a handle on it. It was really dragging me down and kind of like eating me alive. And like, there was a lot of self-sabotage that I was doing. And I was just kind of a shitty person. I mean, when I first got into libertarianism and then I quickly like made the jump to anarchism, like I was also at the time like a hardcore atheist. Like I would quote like Christopher Hitchens stuff like all the time. And so I was like so militant, and I it was cool to hang out with the people who were in agreement with that. But I must have been like the biggest like asshole to be around with everyone else, because I was constantly like jumping down people's throats and being like, you don't understand. This is the thing. This is the way. And and I was drinking a lot, and I was doing, I wasn't really taking care of myself. And so I had heard about ayahuasca for a long time. And anytime I get involved with any kind of psychedelic or anything, I research the hell out of it, like all around. So I've been like researching it for like 2 years. And I finally had an opportunity. I had the money, and I said, you know what? Like, I want to get some clarity over this problem. And I heard a lot of really good stories, people having, being released from their traumas and depression and their anxieties and their OCD and their addictions. And So I went down there and yeah, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life.
Yeah, so you definitely, there was some shifts there. I feel like I went through a lot of what you went through. I was born and raised Catholic, went to Catholic grade school, church several days a week. As I got into high school, I really started to question the Jesus thing, you know, and then you go into state school, someone throws you a Richard Dawkins book and you're like, you know, you kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I found psychedelics, it was very much so about like reconnecting to spirituality. I'm like, I'm going to put this atheist, like I was pretty well atheist, maybe agnostic, somewhere in between. I'm like, I'm going to put this to the test. Because I've heard, you know, people like you, people come back and they do ayahuasca or others. You're like, dude, after I did this, I believe in God. I've been in this spirit realm. And so for me, that's when I looked for these psychedelics. So did you have a similar experience to that? And what was your experience on the medicine, and did it shift? How did it shift your perspectives?
Yeah, it's a really intricate, complex, dense, nuanced matrix of a puzzle. You know, it's this kind of infinite unfolding and cleaning and clearing of things. It took a long time actually for me to, you know, they say that the real work begins when the ceremony ends, when you leave.
Yeah.
And I think that's true because, you know, it's like a spiritual laundromat or something. You know, you bring all your stuff and you try and clean it, but then you got to take it home and you got to fold it and put it away and, you know, buy some new things to add to it and stuff. And so it really kind of made me see my own stuff, made me see the stories I'm telling, made me see the misalignment with what I say and with what I do. It made me see why I behave in certain ways. You know, these unconscious behaviors, where do they come from? What is it about? And so it really helped me get clarity over that. That being said, it wasn't like this, you know, wonderful wake up in Neverland. Well, I mean, you probably don't want to wake up in Neverland.
Yeah.
But you know, the actual
Peter Pan.
Yeah, not the crap one with the other guy.
Peter,
Anyway.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to like, because that's like kind of trending in the news right now, so I didn't want to make that connection. But yeah, it's not like you're waking up in some utopia and you're just like, oh wow, everything's better now. But I was reading this book by this spiritual teacher Adyashanti called The End of Your World, and that's very much what happens after a very profound psychedelic experience. I had a very, you know, enlightening Kundalini awakening experience, and it was very difficult. It was very challenging because all these pieces of my life that I thought were part of my identity or that were serving me or that what I was doing for some reason just crumbled to pieces. And I had to be like forced into a position to kind of, you know, pick up my sword and my shield and like enter the cave and like slay the dragon, you know. Like I had to be put in that position. And I, for the first time in my life, I realized that I realized how true that was because I felt it on like a cellular level. It wasn't just like a logical, rational understanding of it. Yeah. It was emotional understanding.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the psychedelic experience is exactly that. It integrates, like, you know, I'll think something, but I don't necessarily feel it. And when I'm on psychedelics, there's a direct connection to the way I feel with the way I kind of see the world. And almost like people see, you can see colors. So there's definitely something to be said about that. So what do you tell people? Well, I got two questions. One is, one thing that I've been experiencing, especially after my experiences with psychedelics, is I listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson now, I'm reading more about Carl Jung. There's another YouTube channel called Academy of Ideas. They do a lot of stoicism. They're great, man. I want to try and talk to those guys. But I look back on the symbolism in my psychedelic experiences. And I don't know if this is true for you, but I'm putting pieces together now. And this is what I want to hit the nail on the head, where like the real work begins after the ceremony. People don't understand. I think that's one part of psychedelics people don't understand. They think they go there and, like you said, they have this experience, everything's better. And it's like, actually, no, that's when the work begins. That's when you start figuring out the symbolism in who you are. Has that been an experience of yours too, or?
Totally. Yeah. Symbolism, you know, symbolism up the wazoo. It's like deep, ancient symbolism, like that resonates with me on a level that I'm not able to fully logically comprehend, but I know that it just strikes me at the core of my being. And I'm like, okay, now I understand why these symbols have been passed down and used by these ancient civilizations for all time. I understand why this story of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the hero archetype, the mythology, the metaphors, I get it now. It makes sense. It's really, it helps inform me of where I need to be going and the purpose and things like that, because I feel like I'm connected to like a higher archetypical, I'm hesitating because I don't want this to sound grandiose, because that it's not, but you feel like you're a man, and you're a part of like the archetype of men throughout all of time. And these symbols, these experiences, yeah, it's like these symbols, these experiences are like little psychic astral notes from like the netherworld that are like, hey, like we're passing the torch on to you, like do the right thing,
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think psychedelics really did away with the, I guess, what's it like, the social constructs, everything that people say, hey, well, this, like the warrior is just a social construct. And then to me, when I went into the psychedelic experience, I'm like, no, this is something that's like innately almost below logic. Like this is biological, and the human brain, like manifest. That's the best way we can manifest it out into the world, is like through this vision.
Yeah. Cause it's trying to communicate the uncommunicatable. Like, if that's a word, like trying to put into language which has no form, because I think when you go the dream world, the psychedelic space, any altered state of consciousness space, you're communing with the transcendental. You're communing with something that's beyond our capacity for understanding. And I think it's the job of somebody who is going to create something in the world to try and transmute that in something that is digestible and palatable for yourself and for others, so that we can make sense of this greater meaning.
Wow. Have you talked to some people who, I don't want to say rip on the psychedelic experience, but people, especially at least when I'm in the self-improvement realm, where people are like, well, I don't need to do psychedelics to reach that state. And I've never been one to like push it on people either. If people come to me and like, hey, should I do this? I'm like, do you feel like you should? Then you should. But sometimes I get some feedback from people that are like, oh, I'm able to do this without psychedelics. I don't need to do that. Have you had that experience? And do you have any feelings or thoughts about that?
Sure. I've had great experiences without psychedelics. Like I've had really profound out of body experiences, not on psychedelics, through breath work, meditation, flotation, sensory deprivation tanks. Yeah, I mean, even just like going on a hike to the top of a mountain and staring out at the landscape below. I mean, if you really just, give yourself some space and quiet your mind and let that soak in, I mean, you can tap into something there. I think this psychedelic realm is available to us like at all times. I think, it's just a matter of being present and aware and listening to it. Now, with that being said, obviously it's looking out at a landscape is not going to be like taking 5 dried grams of mushrooms. There's a difference to that, and that's noticeable. But these are sacred, I think, sacraments for communion, communicating with the divine, with something that is, every tradition reveres these things as like gifts from the gods. The Greeks had a whole system of their mystery schools, the school of the Elysian mysteries schools, and they drank this brew called the kykeon. Like when people came of age, it was like the right of every Greek to go there and to have direct experiences with themselves and these sorts of things. So not everybody has to partake in that, and that's fine if people don't want to, and if they can achieve those states and they feel comfortable and happy doing what they're doing, great. I just happen to really love the psychedelic experience, so that's my thing.
I don't remember if it was Aubrey Marcus, but I heard, and I've heard him say this. What's the quote? there's no need to burn down the house to bake a loaf of bread. Just turn on the oven. That's one of the arguments. I totally agree. I think there's a large variety of ways to have a psychedelic experience. Psychedelic, and really just means reveal the mind to itself. It doesn't mean you have to do plant medicines or anything.
That's right.
But what's cool is, like you said, I know of more people doing breath work, more people doing flotation tanks. Are those can you talk about your experiences? Do you do those on the regular, or?
I wish I'd like to think of myself as the kind of person that sticks to it on a regular basis, but yeah, I mean, like 3-4 times a week, something like that,
Better than me.
I try and I kind of force myself to do something every day, and so if I miss a day, I'm like, okay, I missed a day, but I'm always constantly returning to the well, and I think that's good. And I love Jordan Peterson, what he says with, do it and do it badly, because, if you just keep doing it, you develop consistency over time, and that creates new habits. So I think that's the best way to start doing something, is just start doing it. And, you might not do it right, but just keep doing it. And yeah, with breath work, I started doing, it was hard for me to connect with some of the like Eastern traditional type stuff. I don't know. I had a little, maybe aversion to it or skepticism or something. I'm not really sure why, but for whatever reason, the Wim Hof method was something that I connected with. Mm-hmm. And some meditation teachers, this guy, Corey Allen, who had a meditation course called Releasing Now. So these things kind of really helped me. And I kind of put together my own thing that works for myself. And, the breath work I think is amazing. And cold showers are really nice, not all the time, but a little jolt at the end. It's good for you. It's good for me. Yeah.
Mike, why are specifically psychedelic plants, why are they illegal? I think this is one of the biggest questions and the biggest thing you talk about from a libertarian perspective, talking about the freedom to choose what goes in your body and the freedom to have, thoughts, right? Graham Hancock, Terrence McKenna, I believe, are two guys you follow like me.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, man? What's going on here?
Well, I think that I think it's human beings' natural tendency to group together and to develop into some form of a hierarchy, right? I think that's pretty natural. To deny that, I think, is, that's just illusionary. Like you're not living in the truth if you think that there's no hierarchy. It's a natural form of order that happens, right? But I think that what happens is that the people that are in these places, in these positions of power, take advantage of the population, so you can have a hierarchy that's respectful. You can have a hierarchy of wise elders that lead by example, mm-hmm. and say like, hey, this is the way. I think we see that with like what we're doing, right? We look at people who are doing podcasts and writing books, and people like Jordan, like Aubrey, like Joe, like Joe Rogan. Like I'm on a first base. Yeah, my buddy Joe.
Yeah,
but
we all are.
These people who are doing these things, these kind of become the people that lead by example and show us the way, and we go, oh yeah, that makes sense. But naturally, when you have this hierarchy that's that wants to stay in its place of power and will do anything to make that happen, they got to get rid of anything that makes you understand and see the truth. Mm. And the truth is that you're it. Like it's you. Like you're your own authority. You're a perfect being that is in this world, and you don't need to be scolded and told what to do and have restrictions and rules and shackles put on you. But if you want to live like the elites in our society live, and do the things that they do, you have to keep the population subdued, mm-hmm. and confused and lost and dependent, and you have to keep the population with gaping holes in their souls so that they look for things to fill that space.
Save us.
Yes. And like when George Bush came out and after 9/11 and he was like, well, we need people to go shopping. That's what we need to do. It's like, dude, what? Like, what is this? So, yeah, psychedelics are illegal because they decondition you. They make you realize everything that you've ever had, you ever wanted, you already have. And that there's a veil that's been foisted on you, and that we've been conditioned to believe we're these weak, subservient beings that need, authority figures to save us. Ever since we are children, we're kidnapped by the state. We're thrown into indoctrination camps and brainwashed. We're not told, how to think. Mm-hmm. We're told what to think. Mm-hmm. We're told to be obedient, order takers that can follow rules, that could just be cogs in a machine, but that's not what we are. Mm-hmm. I hear people like all the time say like, oh, I'm not creative. Like, I'm not an artist. I'm not good at that kind. It's like, no, dude, you are. You just don't know it, because you've been conditioned and you've been, it's been layered on so thick. It's almost invisible of how thick it's layered on. It's like being a fish in a toxic sea of water, not knowing, being like, oh, this is weird. And then all of a sudden when you take psychedelics, the water clears up and you're like, oh, a whole new world. Like this makes sense. This is real. Oh, this is all garbage. Let's do away with that. And so if people start realizing that, if people start having these experiences and waking up to that, then there's no need for the illusion of authority in our world. They have no reason to exist.
Mm. Yeah, I see that.
They have no reason to exist and get away with doing the things that they do, which is insane.
Well, and what I don't get, and one of my favorite parts about libertarianism is how people are like, the overall saying is like, people are bad, so they need to be controlled. And I'm like, by who? Other bad people? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I would much rather walk a path of my own and be wrong than to be controlled in a path that is straight. But a lot of people, for some reason, don't feel that way. And I think that's, at least in my experience, the psychedelic experience really helped to amplify that. And I'm curious to see, I was listening today about, one of these VR guys was talking just about, how Instagram, Facebook, all these social media platforms are now becoming like the next control tool.
They already are.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel I'm caught in between, and I'd love to hear what you think just about, I want to be on Instagram. I want to promote things, but the one thing that really bothers me, I'm in the health and wellness space, and there are people in the health and wellness space that preach authenticity and like to believe in yourself and confidence, and they're buying followers so their profile looks more legit. Like, I literally know of people that do that. And I'm like, that is the exact opposite of being authentic. And I think it's kind of lying to people to confuse them. I'm like, I want to help people, but then it's like, how do you help people and not become part of the system?
Yeah.
And especially now with censorship coming in there. I don't know about you. I actually had my podcast running last year, and I had some, one of my butt, and I don't know what it was. I did a B12 shot, so I showed a little bit of my butt, but then I did some videos talking about what's it, Q-Yon? The kind of like, if you're familiar with that?
Yes. Yeah.
I had a friend who we were kind of talking about that, and I don't know, but for some reason my channel just got straight banned. Like, I started, it was like 2 months in, and then banned. And at first they gave me a warning, and then I said, hey, sorry about it. What did I do wrong? And they're like, see our 13 pages.
Right. Yeah.
Policy. And I'm like, okay, well, there's 13 pages here. I won't do what I did wrong if you'll tell me. And then a week later, they're like, after further review of your account, it's completely banned, man. So I just like, I feel like we're running into 1984 here.
We're already there. I mean,
don't say that. Don't say that.
I mean, it's true. And I think it's more Brave New World than 1984. I read this great book called "Amusing Ourselves to Death" by Neil Postman, and one of the quotes in the book was like, Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, he believed that in the future, there would be no reason to ban books, Orwell had predicted in 84, because no one would want to read them.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I see that when I look out at the kind of mainstream landscape of what's popular in music and culture and social media and these sorts of things, I don't see like I see like a toxic wasteland, of people who are just junk food, numbing their minds, checking out, just the lowest common denominator. And it's a whole complex web that has been constructed, right? And it's hard to sort of like get out of that. But I think if you see, if you can see it, then at least you're aware of it. It's not super scary. I don't think that we're going to end up, in some like hellish landscape. I think it kind of already exists.
Don't say it, Mike. Don't say it.
but there's hope though. There's hope because there's people like you. There's people like, Aubrey and these other guys and people like there's authentic, genuine people out there. And that like, you can't break that connection from somebody's heart and soul to another person's heart and soul. You can't break that connection of real, genuine authenticity. People can be fooled, they can be tricked, but eventually they're not going to fully buy into that stuff. Some people probably will, but I think most people will gravitate towards when the truth is revealed. It can be like it's so apparent when that happens.
And we talked about Tim Pool before the podcast here a little bit, and I'm very well aware that you're in this. The Joe Rogan. Joe's like the godfather of podcasting. Everyone kind of knows that.
Yeah.
There's kind of like a clan of people running in that area. And
let me put my Tim Pool hat on.
There he is, man. If you guys haven't, go check that out. Tim Pool was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and I think he kind of redeemed himself because I've been following. There's been some stuff with Joe where I actually started, like you're saying, like, oh, people are authentic, and then I'm like, but like Joe, when he had Jack Dorsey on that time, there was a lot of pushback because he didn't. Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, there's some censorship things going on, and Joe Rogan had Jack Dorsey on there and didn't really grill him for it much. And kind of the same thing with Alex Jones. I don't know how you feel about Alex Jones. Being a libertarian, I think he should be able to say whatever the heck he wants. And he says some crazy things. He says some really good things. I personally enjoyed this last episode. Joe had Alex Jones back on after previously saying he wouldn't. So for a little bit there, I was kind of afraid that Joe had sold out, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this is just a natural occurrence that, like, have you ever watched Seinfeld?
Which one?
Have you ever watched Seinfeld?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I'm a huge fan of that show, and it was great for the first like 4 or 5, for the first like 6 seasons, I think maybe 7, but towards the end, it got really wacky and kind of like crazy. And, you see this happening with like bands and stuff. People are like, oh, their old stuff was good, but now they're just kind of like mainstream and lame. And I think that's just like what happens as we grow, as like more people are paying attention, there's more feedback coming in. We're all human, I don't think Joe is like, I don't think Joe Rogan's like a CIA operative or like anything like that. I mean, but you never know. I mean, like the level of influence that his podcast has, I mean, I guarantee you that he definitely gotten some forms of messaging from somewhere that says, hey, you better watch yourself when you talk about this stuff, or something like that. Maybe not in that form, but something to that effect.
Well, and I don't think, like you said, the normal everyday person doesn't realize what YouTube has happened. Like for those who are out there, you don't know people, like there's PewDiePie. He has like 60 or 70 million subscribers, right? So every time he sends out a video, 60 to 70 million people get dinged. Joe is at immediately 4 to 5 million, but that's like, people don't like, that's more people than watch the nighttime news. More people are tuned. Yeah. And it's like the level of influence that's there. And like you said, the government goes very sneakily about things. I would also like for you to talk a little bit about the economic hitman. I remember learning about that, and you have one of your best podcasts is about that. And I think people don't understand the level of like what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? Can you elaborate a little bit on the economic hitman and what that's about and how that those kind of conspiracies that really happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want to talk about that, the economic hitman. And then just real quick before, I just want to make a point about like the level of understanding, like when people hear things like this, like, oh, that stuff's not real. Like that stuff doesn't, oh, no one would do that. And it's like, just look what happened in your life. What happens at your job, at your office, in your family, in relationships? What happens when you're around people that you just interact with? Do people have agendas? Are people plotting maybe sometimes? Are people doing things behind your back? Yeah, I mean, it's like, look, this is human nature. This is human nature. So what happens when you magnify that on a colossal scale and then give it all the power, all the money, and all the resources? What do you think's going to happen? Like, people are going to do what they want to do to get what they want no matter what. And that's just human nature. So, like the economic hitman stuff, right? So John Perkins, amazing guy, really fascinating story. I had him on the podcast, I think episode 40 something or whatever. And
go check it out.
Yeah, check that out and read his book. When I read his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman in college, I was fucking blown away.
Mm-hmm.
Can I curse on this show? I don't know.
Sure thing. I need to label it explicit. I don't know how that happens.
Or maybe you could bleep it out. I won't. I'll try to.
So good, man. I want to be authentic. I want people to, don't censor yourself.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, so the economic hitman. So his story was basically like, he was out of college. He was working for this contractor company that the government would hire. That was their only employer, was the government, right? Yeah. Where there's a lot of contractors where their only employer is the government, and they get millions, billions, trillions from the government, whatever. And his job was basically to go overseas and try and negotiate business deals with foreign nations that had resources that we were interested in. So he would go to Guatemala or whatever and meet with the leader there and say, hey, listen, I'll arrange this loan for you from the World Bank, from the IMF. We'll get this money together. We'll be able to give it to you. You'll be able to do projects and improve your land for your people. You'll be able to stay in power because the people will love you. You'll be able to build a dam or whatever. All that we ask for in exchange is that, you let us operate in your country, extract some resources, set up some posts for maybe military bases or something like that. And, if they agreed, then it was great. But they're in debt. They're in debt and they can't pay that money. It's hard to pay that money back. So it's the favors keep increasing and increasing and increasing. Let us have a little bit of this. Let us have a little bit of that. Or, hey, this guy, he's not playing ball. Send in the jackals, send in the hitmen. Let's take him out. Let's install our puppet regime that will just follow our dictates and mandates. And yeah, that stuff happens all around the world. I mean, one of the most famous examples of that was in Iran with the Shah in 1954. United States government basically said, "Hey, we're gonna install our own regime there. Let's fund a rebel group to start an uprising." And that's the playbook. That's the playbook for global empire. Funding small rebel groups, arming and training them, getting them to incite riots or cause disruption, rally people to their cause, and then take over the seats of power. And then we have someone in there that's playing by our rules. We can open up lanes for oil drilling and trafficking and arms sales and opium and heroin, exchanges and crack cocaine, all this kind of stuff. And that's the money that gets made out of that gets into black budget operations to fund, the next photon weapon or whatever, So.
Yeah, and that's where I think I remember reading about, and I've not read his book. I've just heard him talk several times on your podcast, a couple other podcasts. There's some really good YouTube clips of like a cartoon animation of it that I really, really like. And I think that was one of the major shifting moments for me to go libertarian because of that. When I saw him, the more power we give the government, the more of a monopoly that they're in. I think that's where people don't really understand libertarianism and anarchists. It isn't that we want capitalism to run abroad and corporations to take over. It's like the government is the biggest thug of them all. And the more power you give them, these corporations just dig their claws into them and use them like a weapon. And
exactly.
I mean, I don't know on your end, the things that we as a society can do is to try and push the libertarian movement personally, because the two-party system is completely corrupted by, it's a gang. I mean, to me, the Bushes, the Clintons, Obama, same dang thing. I don't know. What do you think about Trump? Is he in the gang?
We're in such an interesting time for presidents and politics and stuff. It's almost that we've ripped completely so far away from anything resembling standard reality that we're in this totally new game and these new rules. And you even see it with the opposition with AOC and some of the people that are running opposition to him. You got to go more radical, more big and bold, get scandalous, enter the news cycle, get those clicks, get that advertising So we're like consuming ourselves. It's really odd. We're in this really weird time where it's just like, it's strange. It's all about headlines and clicks and outrage and shares and more advertising money. And so Trump is just Trump is a reflection of that.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is a mirror to the cultural climate that we find ourselves in. Trump is a mirror for what our culture values. We value entertainment, outrage, reality TV, big budget popcorn movies. We want to see drama, excitement. We want something to like get worked up about and all this stuff. But ultimately, I just think he's an actor. I just think he's a showman. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's trying to do some good things. I don't really know. I think he has done some good things. I mean, not a lot of people know this, but Trump signed a bill into legislation that was called the Right to Try Act. So anybody that has like a terminally ill condition has the right to try anything they want, mushrooms, LSD, whatever. They have the right to try that. And so, he's done some good things. I hear that he is really going after a lot of sick, disgusting, pedophile activity that's been never reported on as much as it should be and not brought to the attention. But I heard that he's doing that. I don't know for sure a lot about that, but I generally see Trump as a distraction, but I don't know.
This is where I'm telling you, it gets so damn confusing. Like, like Joe Rogan was the one guy I trusted. Like, he was like, okay, well, I don't know Trump, I don't know Obama, but I'm like, I can trust Joe. And then all of a sudden, when a couple of those podcasts happen, I'm like, wait a minute. And then, I think that's society right now. Everyone's so damn confused, including me. Because it's like, to me, what's interesting, I like your analogy of like, everyone just wants drama. Like, whether or not they admit it, there are some people that in your life that just want drama. And you're just like, can you stay away from me? But society is coming to the point where I think our lives are so dull. That's where we want this drama to brighten things up. Because it's like, you look at Gore versus Bush, kind of the same guy. Like, when you look at like Cortez versus Trump now, you're like, whoa, like those guys are pretty much twins compared to the polarization we see right now.
Yeah.
So we are definitely living in interesting times, and we need I think we need to have more conversations like this, and hopefully people will tune in.
Yeah, I think Trump is a great revealer, though. Like, I think that he's like, Ron Paul was the best, right? Ron Paul just like
love it.
Yeah, Ron Paul just like grabbed the Matrix and like ripped it open and was like, we're spending trillions of dollars on these wars. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
He just ripped through that. And he said amazing, profound, wise, and intelligent things. Trump just smashes through it with a sledgehammer. And he's just like, you stupid, you fat, you're ugly, whatever it is that he's saying. And but it gets people worked up, and people need a cause to rally around to say, like, this is the problem. Let's focus on that. Once we get rid of this guy, everything's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. But really, it's just about his image, because if you look at the policies and stuff, it's like, I mean, Obama was a guy that was well-dressed, well-spoken, the best orator I've ever seen in my life, amazing at giving speeches, talking, rousing people up, intelligent, sharp. You want to be friends with him. You want to hang out with him, Oh, yeah. We're going to join together as red states, blue states, and, we're the United States, and it's like, yeah, man. But the policy, he said so much, so much terrible things, but people psychologically can accept that because of the presentation that he has. He does it with, he murders people with drones with class,
Yeah.
With Trump, it's this white male, aggressive, rapist, misogynist, and so we in the story of our lives, we need to cast ourselves. If we're going to cast ourselves as the heroes, we need to cast someone as a villain, and that's the villain of our time right now.
I love that. And your Obama impersonation reminded me, if you haven't checked out some of Mike's impersonations, they're pretty good, right? With Trump, and you did an Alex Jones one too, didn't you?
Yeah. I did. I just mess around with like Snapchat when I had it. I don't have it anymore. They had like the face filters, and you could put anyone's face on it. So I did Trump, and I did like Trump debating Bernie Sanders, and I did Alex Jones. I did like the My Pillow guy. I don't know if you ever saw that commercial. I did that guy. I have fun. I like to do voices and be funny.
Isn't it interesting how a lot of the public figures right now that are presenting information are all comedians? Like, can you look at Joe Rogan, the Night Show? And this is one of my, I don't mean to go to favor the conservative end. Obviously, I have my biases, but late night it's all the same thing. It's all this liberal comedian stuff that are pushing, I feel like, more government agenda. I mean, obviously, Fox News has its faults as well, but it's like that's the takeover right now, isn't it?
It's fucking lame. It's just lame. It's not funny. Like Jimmy Fallon is not funny. These people are just, they're not funny. Maybe John Oliver has some good segments, I think, but Bill Maher every now and then has some good segments, but for the most part, it's just kind of lame.
I just don't get how, to me, they're all the same. They all say the same thing, and I don't get how they're, and I don't know if that's an illusion about, things going strong. I heard that about, like the new Marvel movie, there's some people pushing back, right? They turned Captain Marvel into a female, and then the main actress came out and was like, I don't care what 41-year-old white males say, this movie isn't for them, when in all actuality, the majority of Marvel fans are white males.
Yeah, she's an idiot.
But I had heard that, like a Disney probably, like the movie did like 450 million. And it's like, did Disney just go and buy a bunch of tickets to push the agenda forward? It's like, those are the areas where I'm just so scared anymore. I don't know what to think.
Well, I saw this movie, and
how is it? I want to see it, but I don't want to support it.
It's not bad. I mean, yeah.
And I've heard that it's actually pretty good, politics aside.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. I mean, like, it's not bad, but it's like, this is my main problem with this whole climate of like PC social justice stuff. My biggest problem with it is, anybody that gets so passionate about one aspect of their identity is just lame. It's like, this movie's important because it's about a woman. It's like, okay, but like, are you gonna tell a cool story? Are you gonna make it interesting? Like, cool, like make it about a woman. That's great. Like, I don't care. Make it about a black, trans, a woman, whatever. Make it about, so I don't care who the person is. I don't care what they're doing, but don't like jam this messaging that it matters, that their identity matters more than their actions and their character and the story and what we're doing. I think that's where we've gotten lost in our world, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I see, look at the world, and I see like, there's there's unfair treatment.
Yes,
some people are treated unfairly. Like there's definitely like, some like we're unaware of maybe like some prejudices that we have or some things like that. And it's like, should we work to improve on those things? Of course we should. We shouldn't just like, push this message out there that this is good just because of this singular aspect of the identity of the thing that we're talking about. It's like, no, people are dynamic and fluid and changing at all times. Their personalities and their identities are made up of millions of different things. Let's just explore what's interesting about that and leave all the other crap to the side, because it's annoying.
I saw a meme like that where, Marvel, it was like Marvel's like, we have a new movie starring a woman. And then there was like a crowd of people. They're like, yeah, but is it good? And then everyone,
yeah.
It's like, we could care less. Like, don't give, like, once you make it about an agenda, now I'm like, I'll be honest. I was like, well, now I don't want to support you. Like, I want to be capitalistic and be like, I don't like the way you're coming out, so I don't want to support you.
Yeah, and I tweeted about this. I was like, could you imagine if like Iron Man was just like, this is a movie not just about a superhero, but about a man. Yeah. Like, don't forget, he's a man, and this is a man's movie. It's like, all right, man, like sure, like cool. Or like Black Panther, like this isn't just like a cool movie about an African prince and like, a superhero movie, but it's about a black man, and you have to care because it's a black. It's like, nah, like the movie was cool.
It was really good. I liked it.
And they had women in that movie too. And they didn't have to like beat us over the head with it and say, these are strong women. They didn't have to tell us. They showed us, and it was cool. It was fine. It was like, I remember in the Star Wars movie, like The Force Awakens, like they're running away, and like, Finn grabs Ray's hand and she's like, what do you do? And they kind of like did that beat like over and over again, like 3 times. And like, it was like, you didn't even need, like, we get it. Like, we get it. She's a strong, independent woman. Just show us.
Yes.
We don't need this. We don't need to be told this. And I'm fully in support of that. You know what I mean? My girlfriend's a strong, independent woman that could probably kick my ass. I support that. You know what I mean? She shows me. She doesn't need to tell me.
Yeah, it's interesting how we're all shifting, and I guess too that's where the feedback from the public will kind of shift through that, right? Like hopefully from a capitalistic standpoint, when true capitalism prevails, we can kind of let the market decide, hey, is that what we want? Because on the other end, there are, to be honest, and I thought about this, when they lost a large variety of probably men who didn't go to the movie, they probably did gain a lot of women who are like, hell yeah, I'm going to go support that movie because she said that.
Right.
So we'll see how the market goes with things. Mike, what has been some of your favorite parts about podcasting when you look back, and what are some of the golden gems you feel like you've learned over the last couple of years?
Well, I really love the opportunity to be able to reach out and talk to almost anyone that I want to, which is really nice. And I learn a lot from guests that I have on my show, which is good, and form, good connections and friendships. And I like that. But I think probably the most important thing that I learned from doing my podcast was that if I totally open up and continually show up and take my mask off and sit down and just reveal myself and talk openly and honestly about what I'm going through, my experiences, what I think, my opinions about things, not worrying about, is this cool? Is this good? Is this going to be, is this going to be something that gets like retweeted, or is this going to have is this going to be clipped or whatever it is? Like, not going in with any like agenda other than just like fully releasing like the dam between like my heart, mind, psyche, soul, spirit, and just letting everything that I have inside of me flow out into the microphone. I learned that by doing that, that there's an audience out there for that, and that people respect vulnerability and honesty and openness, and I learned how to do that myself. And I feel from doing the podcast that it's been very cathartic, therapeutic. It's been very invigorating, and I'm constantly excited to turn the microphone on and do something, because it's a new opportunity to create a new moment, to formulate new ideas, to have new expressions, and to communicate with new and interesting people. And, like Jordan Peterson says, like, we need freedom of speech, because we need to know what we think. We need to know, like, if the ideas that we have are good and worthy of being like replicated. And by me taking my puzzle piece and like putting it out there and trying to connect it with other people's puzzle pieces, it's like, that's how we form through our thoughts and ideas that come out of these small mouth noises in the lowest hole in our face. This is how we build worlds that are worth participating in. This is how we build systems and ideas that are worth participating in. And so as soon as you start shaming people or guilting people, you shouldn't think this way, you shouldn't say those things, you actually limit someone's thoughts. You limit the it's like mind control. You limit like the activity that's going on in the brain, because you start questioning you question yourself. When you start questioning yourself, you should totally question yourself, but when you start questioning, like, oh, I don't know, should I say that? Should I say this? You hold back, and you don't deliver something that might be of value. If it's of value, the marketplace will say, this is of value. Like, my listeners on my show give me feedback, and they say, this is great, man, keep doing this. Or they say, hey, like, maybe take it easy on the rants in the beginning of the episode, tone it down a little bit. I'm like, okay, note taken.
Yeah.
So it's just the collaborative process of exchanging ideas and information, and building upon that with other people is such a privilege. And obviously privileged to be speaking about this with you today. So there we go.
Yeah, I think you really hit on something there about the way I've been kind of thinking about that. It's almost like you have a can of pressure, like your brain, like you have so much information. And if you stifle its growth, it like stunts itself, and then it gets mad. And then at least for myself, this one of the best parts about the podcast for me is being able to have discussions with people like you, other people I connect with. And if I don't talk about these things, I just drive myself literally like mad. Like that's, Friedrich Nietzsche, they think he went mad probably because he had all these ideas he wasn't able to talk with people about to get it out. Like, does this make sense? Does this make sense? Like, what do you think about that?
That's right. And that tension, that'll get released somewhere else.
Yeah. Good point.
That'll manifest in anxiety, overeating, sleeplessness, anything, pain in the body. Any restrictions that we impose on ourselves, or restrictions that we impose we allow others to impose on us, that energy is going to go somewhere, and so it's better to go in productive and healthy places, like, thought-provoking dialogue and conversation, exercise, and, getting together with groups and communities to do, sporting events or group style activities, whatever it is. These types of things, that's what we need. Like, that's kind of all that we need, really.
It's like your duty. If you don't do it, it'll make you sick. Well,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mike, it's been a great conversation. What are some of your favorite podcasts? If people want to, hey, go check out, which episode do you tend to send people to when they're like, I want to check out your work?
Oh, of my show?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm always so bewildered because I have so many different kinds of shows. Like a lot of my old shows, I feel like I've said things in these shows that I don't even believe anymore. And I'm like, I can't even believe I put that crap out.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to go hear some, just look through the titles of the episodes or whatever. And if anything sticks out to you, go check that out. I mean, if you're interested in listening to guests, I've had Thaddeus Russell on, I've had John Perkins from Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I've had Daniel Pinchbeck, JP Sears, I don't know, a bunch of other people I can't think of off the Shane Moss, comedian Shane Moss, Dave Smith, obviously from Part of the Problem. And, you just go through and just look and look at the titles. And if something resonates with you, check that out. Some of them are really raw, open, honest, sensitive, vulnerable, solo casts with just myself. Some of them are interesting conversations with guests. Some of them are funny, and some of them are really kind of like, does this guy have a mental problem? So it's a mixed bag there, but just check it out. Mikeadelic podcast. It's everywhere podcasts are found, Apple's podcast, Spotify, YouTube. And then I put out a lot of other content on Instagram at Mikeadelic_podcast.
All right. You heard it here, peeps. Go check him out. Go subscribe. Listen to what he's got. And hey, comment. Let him know if you think he sounds like he's got a mental problem in the episodes, right? Free marketing. All right?
Yeah. Message me. I always respond to people on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere. On my website, shoot me an email. It's mikebrank.com, BRANC. So go to the website, everything's there. And I love engaging with people. I love hearing people's real honest opinions and thoughts. There's nothing more that I hate than hearing fake admiration or compliments. So if you do listen to the show, give it to me straight. I could take it,
I love it. Hey, Mike, it's been an honor having you on here. Appreciate all the hard work you do. And I hope that you can continue to charge forward with it. I think you're doing great.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, this has been great. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it. All right. Recording stopping now.